Hi, I'm Evie Kim Singh, editor of identityweek.net. Today I'm in conversation with Nick Mothershaw, who's Chief Identity Strategist at the Open Identity Exchange for identityweek.net. Nick has a big role in the industry, working with companies who influence technologies, frameworks, and boost use cases around identity. It's great to speak to you today, Nick. You're also a chair at our most recent event in Singapore. I just wanted to say, from the last year, what's been your biggest takeaway from meeting and working with the identity industry?
Yeah, I think we saw two things in 2023. At the beginning of 2023, I said it was going to be the year of the wallet. And it was certainly the year where a lot happened with wallets, a lot moved forward. So we saw the establishment of the Open Wallet Foundation at the beginning of the years. We saw the EU progressing with its UD Wallet program, and we saw lots of other governments and private sector parties looking at how a wallet's going to be playing in the world of identity. So we've talked a long time about digital identity. We're now seeing that digital identity being carried in a wallet alongside lots of other credentials, which prove not just who I am, but what I'm eligible to do. Can I get on a plane? Do I have the right visa? What about my health credentials, my education, my employment? So all of that is coming together. So that's a massive shift from us worrying about just the identity of the individual. Is this individual, to actually what else can we do? And that's an important move, because it means we now get complete services from the wallet, not just, yes, I know who this person is, I now understand what they're eligible to do as well. So that's been a massive shift. By no means complete. It's very much a start. There's lots more work to do on wallets and how they're going to evolve. The other thing we saw happen over last year was a lot more talk about interoperability. And it's good we're having that conversation in parallel with establishing wallets, because that means we can design them to be interoperable across jurisdictions. So within the EU, the whole purpose of the UD wallet is to enable interoperability across member states by delivering a consistent wallet approach that importantly delivers consistent information across each different jurisdiction there. But without, inside the EU, we saw just before Christmas, the EU and US had been doing an analysis of their respective frameworks and released a paper around interoperability, largely focused on the proofing areas and concluding that they are similar in that they both have 3 levels of assurance, but within there are differences. And at Open Identity Exchange, we've been doing a lot of work on those similarities and differences. We've been talking to 8 frameworks around the world at the moment. We saw the establishment of the City Hub initiative towards the end of last year as well, which will now bring in many more governments, like 18 governments engaged in that programme. And so interoperability across nations, across ecosystems is now really on the agenda. And again, we're a long way off achieving that. This is, we're going to need some new standards, new approaches. This is a 3 to 5 year mission that we're on to enable interoperability, but it really felt like that kicked off last year.
Yeah, and you mentioned there the state of interoperability. Obviously, wallets, they're going to enable all of our credentials, digital credentials, ID credentials to be stored in one place. That's great then. So we haven't got long to go until implementation is really going to be, delivered. How do you think that second amendment, what should it be? How should the industry be reacting to that now? What's the next steps?
In terms of the EU, so the clock is now ticking, isn't it, in terms of delivery? However, we're seeing that large-scale projects continuing to explore the different use cases. We're seeing nations now looking to design how they're actually going to implement a wallet. Germany's got some consultations out. Estonia has gone out for some consultancy to help. It's a tight deadline. And frankly, it feels ambitious. It's always been ambitious. Whether countries manage to meet the timescale of the kind of 2 years remains to be seen. But one of the interesting things about the UD wallet is it's a unique construction. The personal identifiable data that's going to go in it needs to come from a government source, and then that becomes essentially a credential, electronic attestation of attributes, as they call it. in the wallet, which means countries who are already issuing IDs need to now issue a wallet and put the ID into that, and enable the user to use that in an interoperable manner. A lot to do there. One of the things I'm waiting to see is we're seeing lots about the wallet and its architecture and how it needs to be constructed. We're seeing a little bit about the identity information, the PID, how what that contains, and therefore how it's going to be issued from the wallet. But most of the use cases that we see, and we see the EU's focus area and the use cases it listed when it's talking about US interoperability in the paper just before Christmas, we're looking at things like travel, which need not just the ID information, they need visa information. It needs the passport information in there, which I know is a form of ID, but it's a different form of credential. It's a digital travel credential. They're looking at education and employment. So what is the standards going to be to communicate a university degree or a high school education, or in terms of employment, a record of employment or an employment qualification for construction or medicine. So I think there's a big gap here still. And we might see wallets delivered that, yes, contain the PID and can prove identity, so they can be used for proof of age, that kind of thing, or access to government services. Some of the use cases that they're really focusing on will need standardization of those other credential types as well. And I'm not seeing much movement on that at the moment. So I think that there'll be almost a second phase to the UD program, which is rounding off the ability to actually do those use cases.
Yeah, and with so many use cases, the regulation has to be there to support them. Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to kind of the evolving fraud trends with deepfakes and how they affect, both electronic and physical documents, and the wallet. Do you think businesses and consumers are really aware of the signs of deepfakes?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the industry news, we're hearing a lot about it. It gets more mainstream, and particularly as we look at how they're used in social media around things like electioneering and impersonation of celebrities. So there's a good awareness of the fact that deepfakes can be readily created and relatively cheaply created. In terms of then leveraging them in the ID ecosystem, so let's just pause and think, well, how are they leveraged? So there's two places where they're leveraged. I've already got an ID and I've got a biometric authenticator, and the deep fake is now going to mimic my biometric and take over. In the biometric authenticator area, there's a lot of liveness checks. There's checks around ensuring that this is not a replay attack. Deep fakes, can they beat all of those? They can probably beat some of them. So there's a need for more robust standards in order to detect deepfakes. The other area then is using a deepfake to establish an identity. So if I want to create a deepfake of Donald Trump and create an identity in his name, getting that through the process of establishing an identity should be difficult, because whilst I can create the deepfake, which is the moving image, what I shouldn't also be able to create is the passport that goes with it. So that the diversity of proofing points that you need to bring together to create an ID are at least some defense against deepfakes. But it's an area where we need more awareness. We need better standards and better detection techniques to determine that a deepfake is in play. However, I would say, the standards at the moment, the false positive, false negative rates that we see with biometric matching, while deepfakes are a threat, there are a lot of threats that are much simpler than a deep fake in terms of replay attacks that still we need to be more robust in addressing.
That's interesting then. So how can we maybe manage decentralized identity to fight fraud? That's another angle.
Yeah, I mean, what decentralizing identity does is shift the data out, doesn't it, into a decentralized model. So we remove the honeypot of a centralized database and the risk of data breach, and then that data being sold on the dark web. So decentralization is something that OIX we're very much supportive of. It doesn't then necessarily remove the deepfake elements. You're looking at two separate angles around fraud prevention. We see the EU, and come back to that, its strategy around decentralization on the wallet is great. So, once your PID is in your wallet and your other credentials, that's in a decentralized architecture. But actually that PID, the personal identifiable data, probably came from a central state database. So it hasn't removed that database, it's still there, but then the management of it by the user becomes distributed. So it's going to be interesting to see how distributed IDs really become. You need backups for these things. So if they are distributed, you need a distributed backup, which is then usually put in the cloud in a centralized place. Yes, they are then broken up into user-based encrypted little pots of data rather than one big one. So the ability to breach that systemically is much defended against. But it's, decentralization is one tool in the defense against fraud. And one tool in the defense against centralized control, but we need to look at all the other elements. So, defending against deep fakes versus decentralized data, two completely different considerations in the battle against fraud.
Yeah, and I reference them both there, but they're obviously very different. Is the regulation balancing? We all talk about balancing innovation with AI technology, with the need for security. Do you think we've got that balance correct at the moment?
Well, yeah, AI and regulations are a thorny area, isn't it, at best? So, it depends whose use of AI are you thinking about. So, one of the things I heard in looking back to 2023, a lot of people talking about AI, and that we're going to see more bad use of AI before we see good use of it. The fraudsters, the miscreants are running ahead of the good guys in their use of AI. So that's resulting in a lot of AI legislation in terms of not permitting AI to be used in certain areas. In digital identity, we're seeing AI used for fraud defenses. And that's is becoming increasingly robust and capable of detecting fraud in the ecosystem. We're seeing it used in kind of biometrics, and again the algorithms are improving. And what we're learning there, I think, is the algorithms need to be trained on the right data. There's been a lot of controversy around AI, particularly facial recognition, in terms of its ability to recognize people of different ethnic backgrounds. A lot of that now appears to be due to the training. That if you train it on a diverse ethnic range, then it will work on a diverse ethnic range, as you might expect. So it's not inherently the AI's fault; it's what the AI has been trained with. So I think there's a long way to go there in terms of AI, and AI technology is definitely running ahead of legislation. And standards. I mean, standards take years to create. AI is evolving at such a rate that standards can't keep up at the moment. We need to see standards around facial matching. There are some patchy standards there. There's some standards around liveness. There isn't an effective standard around that at the moment. One of the things we're pushing for at OIX is standards in validation, verification methodologies. That means that, and this is a key to interoperability. If I'm going to trust an ID from somewhere else, I've got to make sure that it's operating to the correct standards. That means that these AI-based attacks are defended against.
Thank you so much. I think we've established, there's more road to go down for regulation, certainly. Thank you so much. What are you looking forward to with, during the year ahead, really?
Yeah, I think so. We continue the evolution of wallets, both in terms of progress and implementation in places like the EU, other governments deciding about what are their approach. We at OIX continue the journey on interoperability as part of now the City Hub initiative. We're going to be creating some sort of illustrations of how roaming wallets would work as we move from place to place in the future. And that illustration, we talked about a demo originally, but an illustration is going to show us that we've got standards gaps that we can't make it happen at the moment. We need some standards gaps filled, and we need some ecosystem and infrastructure standards as well, enabling the wallet to be trusted as it moves from place to place. So we're going to illustrate that, and that will be kind of ready for the summer as we roll that out. We continue to see governments looking at evolving their frameworks. A lot of them are sitting watching what's happening in the EU and will watch and learn from that rather than galloping towards their own solution. So the EU is very much trailblazing here. So, continuation of wallets, continuation of interoperability, and continued concern on the position and play of AI around this. But we need it to fight the bad guys, principally in my mind on a fraud perspective in the ID ecosystem. Let's leverage it and let it learn quickly there to defend against fraud.
Thank you so much. This ties in with our report on deepfakes and Identity Week shows. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
You're welcome. It's been great to talk to you. I'm looking forward to this year's event.